Hi guys, welcome back to NASA's Thread. So today on the channel, learning how to make a cowl neck top. I have my pattern paper and 2 yards of this fabric I'll be using for this tutorial. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to draft out a basic bodice. Okay, so I'll be drafting this out on my pattern paper and then I will use it to cut out on my material. All right. So like I said, I have 2 yards of this fabric. It's actually a light fabric. I would say it's a silk fabric because it's actually light in texture. So let's get into this. I'm going to rule a line now to mark out my starting point. I'll be using this pattern paper to cut out both the back and the front piece of this top. Okay, so I went ahead to mark out my bust point, my under bust, which is 13, my half length. Okay, so for the full length of the top, I want it to be around 20 by the time I finish. But I noticed that my paper was shorter than what I wanted. Okay, so when cutting this out, I'm going to add an extra 2 inch that I'll be using for my hemming and my joining allowance at the top. All right, so I'll just draw out my lines to mark out my points. Okay, I'm just going to roll out these lines right now. So I've done that. I'm just going to label the lines. The first one is my bust point, my under bust, my half length. Okay, I'll be using the down for now. I'll just mark it out as my full length, and then my shoulder. Right. So this is the paper is folded into two. The next thing I went ahead to do is to mark out my shoulder measurement. That is 15 divided by 2. I have 7.5. I marked that down. It came down by half an inch for my shoulder slant. So I'm just going to slant this into the neckline. You can decide to use 1 inch or half an inch like I'm using for this. So for my neck width, I'm using 3 inches for this. Okay, this is a cowl neck top. The neck measurement doesn't really matter, but because of the back, I'm just marking this out so that it will help me to mark out my back. So for the front, I just came down by 4 inches. Okay, I just came down by 3 inches, sorry. So just 3 to 3, and I used a simple seed to curve this in. So I'll mark out my armhole line, which is 7. That is my bust, round bust divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. And I'll just roll out this line right now. The next thing I went on to do is to connect the line from my slant line down to meet my armhole line. Okay, so on the armhole line, I will take the midpoint of the armhole line. Okay, and then I went in by half an inch. Then the next thing I did was to get my round bust measurement, which is 33 divided by 4. Okay, so I marked that down 8.5 inches. I'm just going to use my curve rule and connect this out to get my armhole. So you can see I've gotten that. Okay, the next thing I went on to do is to add my allowances. Okay, I added 2 inches to that. I'll repeat the same measurement for my bust points. My bust, round bust divided by 4 plus 2 inch allowance. My under bust, the same thing. Okay, my under bust is 30 inches divided by 4. I have 7.5. I went ahead to mark that down, and then I added 2 inches extra for my sewing allowance. I did the same thing for my half length, which is 30. Okay, so I'm just simply taking my circumference measurement. Okay, so for the full length, I will take my hip measurement because I want the top to stop around that area. It's not going to be too long. It's not going to be like underneath my butt or something, but it's going to be around that area. So I went ahead to take that measurement. I'll just mark this and make the connections. Okay, there's a possibility you will not get the same curve as myself because we have different bodies and different bodies measurement. Okay, so whether you get the curve or not, so long as you follow these patterns, you are right. All right, so I finished with that. Okay, I'm just going to cut this out right now so we can go ahead and start cutting on our fabric and sew this down. So I'm just going to cut this out. Okay, like I said, I'll be using this pattern to cut out both the front and the back. I didn't have an extra pattern to do my back part. Okay, so I noticed that the ending of this part was sharp. Just went ahead to take out a little bit of it. All right, so I've gone ahead to fold a fabric into 2. Okay, and I went ahead to mark 2 inches for my zip allowance. Remember I said I want my top to end around 20 by the time I finish doing this. Okay, so I went ahead to mark the length I want the top to end, which is 22. Okay, so I added extra 22 to the length I have on my paper. I added extra 2 inches for that length. All right, so this is what it looks like. I'm just going to pin this down. Okay, so the only difference between this and the back and the front will be the neckline and the zip allowance. I've already marked my zip allowance down. Okay, so I just went ahead to indicate the line for where my top is going to end, so I don't make any mistake. All right, so at the neck area, okay, remember we're using 3 inches. I went ahead to make a mark there, and then for the neck depth for the back, all right, I'll just come down by 1.5 inches. All right, so I'm just going to connect this together with a simple C curve. Right, like I said, the only difference between the front and the back would just be our neckline and then the zip allowance. Remember, we're wearing this with a zip. Okay, except you're making this with a boo, okay, and you want it to be wider, then maybe you have to bring your neck down a lot. Okay, so I went ahead to cut this out with my extra allowance. Okay, the allowance I wanted for the hemming and the joining. Then I'm just going to follow the pattern I have and cut this out. Okay, please be informed that I'm cutting this out. I'm cutting out 2 pieces of this. For our back, we need 2 pieces. All right, it's not folded, they're actually separated. Okay, because we'll be joining them with a zipper at the end. So this is our back piece. Okay, I'll just go ahead to cut out the neck, and we have this. All right, so I'll be working on this later on. Okay, so I've brought in back the paper. We're going to use this to cut out the front. Okay, so I'm just going to give this a little cut. All right, I came down by 7 inches. All right, I'm going to make a straight line from that end to the other point. So I came down from the shoulder point to 7 inches. That's before my armhole point. All right, so I'm just going to make a mark. I'll be using the slash and spread method to get my cowl neck. Okay, so I just make a mark. I didn't cut through this. You can see it looks like this. All right, so this is what I have. Okay, so I placed this on another fabric. This actually is a folded fabric. Now our front to be joined in front, so we don't need it to be cut. We're not adding any zipper in front. All right, so the folded end of the fabric will be replicated on the folded end of the material. Okay, so for the cowl neck distance, to know how to position this, you just take the measurement of how deep or how wide you want your cowl neck to be. Okay, so if you want to have a little cleavage showing, okay, you can go ahead and mark up to 8 inches. Okay, by the time you mark that, you have a little cleavage showing, but I didn't want that. I want mine to be around 5 to 6 inches because I didn't want any part of my bust to be showing. But if you want to show that, you can go above, like use above from 8 inches to thereabout. Okay, but if you don't want yours to be exposed, just use below that number, that's below 8 inches. So I went ahead to trace this out exactly as I have on my paper. Okay, so I went back to confirm that I had exactly what I needed in this front area. Okay, you want to do this. Okay, so I decided to use 5 inches at the end of the day for my drape. Okay, for the cowl neck drape in front. So I went ahead and pinned this down so it will not be moving about while I'm tracing this out on my fabric. Okay, so I just went ahead and traced this out from the bottom. You can see I've already done that of the down, and I traced this out. Okay, so at the neck area, I decided to give it a little curve at the neck area. Okay, so I came down. Okay, instead of using the initial mark I made, I came down by half an inch, and then I connected it to the neck, so it will have a form of curve at the neck area. Okay, even though it is not quite necessary, you can decide not to do this, but I just wanted it to have a form of curve at the neck, and I continued tracing this down. Okay, tracing this down, and then made my line straight to the other point. You can see. So I'm going to unpin, take out my paper now, my pattern paper, so you see what it looks like. Okay, so you're meant to have something like this at the end of the day. Okay, so I'm just retracing this line so you can see the actual line I'm working with. You can see how this looks like. So I'm just going to cut it out. So right now we have our front and back piece ready to start working on this cowl neck top. All right. So if you want to make this a gown, you just have to stop at your half length and then add the down part of it. That's just the only thing to do about that. All right. But we're making a top. I'm making a top. Okay. So I don't really need to do that. So I want this to be fuller. So we have this like this. You can see how it looks like. So by the time we join our shoulders, you see the drape at the top. It's going to look like this. All right. So the next thing I went ahead to do is to cut out an interfacing for this piece. Okay. You don't want the fabric I'm working with it actually looks similar in front and behind, but I still wanted to use an interfacing for this work so that I will not have any troubles later on. Okay, so just make sure your interfacing has about 8 to it has about 8 to 10 inches of allowance. Okay, that's for the length, not the width. Okay, for the length it has about from 8 to 10 inches. Okay, so that it will work well, it will cover well, so that by the time the cowl neck drapes, you know have the back, especially if you're using a fabric that is not like mine that looks similar front and back. Okay, so that you don't have the back of your clothes showing. All right, so I've gone ahead to cut this out. So this is it. All right. Okay, so I actually had to make marks on this so that I will not get confused while I'm stitching this down. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is to place my fabric down and then place my interfacing on it. Okay, front piece facing front piece. Okay, and I'm going to stitch down. Okay, without stitching down the shoulder area, so I just stitch down from the neck area down. Okay, you can see this is what it looks like. I went ahead to iron this down. This is the back part. I didn't stitch down the shoulders like I said, so we have it like this. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is to join my front to the back piece. You can see how it looks like. Okay, so when it drapes, you don't have the back showing. Okay, I've gone ahead to turn over the neck of the back with a bias tape, and then I just use loose stitch to hold down the zip allowance area. Okay, so that I can just join this to the front, and then later on I will loosen it out. All right, so I want to join my shoulders right now. I'm going to place the back piece first, front facing front, and then I'll just go ahead and do this. Okay, remember we have like two pieces in front because of our interfacing, so I'll be using my interfacing to wrap around both of them because I don't want any rough stitch to be showing at the top of the shoulders after stitching this down. Okay, I hope you got that. So I'll use the interfacing to wrap around it. All right, more like using it as a lining piece. So I've gone ahead and done that. You can see how it looks neat from the inside. Okay, so I'm going to keep this aside and cut the sleeves for this. I want to use go ahead to fold this into 4 places, so I'll be cutting both sleeves together. All right, so I've gone ahead to do that. Okay, I'm just going to ensure that I have enough for what I need for my sleeve. Remember I said I'm using I want to make a bishop sleeve for this video. Okay, so I went ahead to mark my starting point for my sleeve, and from that point I'll measure the length I want. Because I'll be using an elastic for this, I went ahead to mark out 24 inches of length. Okay, that is what I'll be using for this, so I'll just rule out this. Okay, then the next thing I'm going to do is just to mark out my sleeve cap. I will be using a free hand to do this. I will not be doing like using a basic sleeve pattern to do this. So I just went ahead and then I measured for the sleeve. I'll just be gathering the down. That means I'll be adding an elastic only to the down part of this, not to the top. So I want to use exactly the measurement, my round armhole measurement at the top. So I did that. Okay, my round armhole measurement is 16. I divided that by 2 and I got 8. I marked that down, and then I added an extra allowance of 1 inch that I will use for stitching down. Okay, so around my wrist area, the measurement I have around there is 6 inches, but I went ahead to mark out an extra 5. That's I added 5 to 6 inches, and I marked out 11 inches. This is because I'll be adding an elastic to this. Okay, So I wanted to have more fabric at the base so that I can get my elastic. When I do my elastic casing, I can add this in. I hope you understand. So if you're doing a bishop sleeve, you can just go through this pattern. Okay, so I went ahead to just start from the up top part and then make my mark down to the end. That's just how I'll be cutting out the sleeve. Okay, like I said, I don't want to gather the top, but if you want to gather the top, you can go ahead and add extra allowances at the top. So like for example, if your round sleeve is like mine 16 and then divided by 2 you have 8, you can decide to add an extra 5 to 6 depending on how much ruffles you want at the top. So this is what we have for the sleeve. I'll go ahead now to fold the edge of my sleeve, okay, by folding it in by half an inch and then folding again to have get my elastic casing. So I've gone ahead and done that. The next thing I want to do is to cut out my elastic. To do this, I'll just put my elastic around my sleeve to get it, and then I'll add extra allowances because I didn't want this to be too tight on my wrist area. So I've gone ahead to do that. I'll just cut out 2 pieces of this to get my elastic for my bishop sleeve. So I'll just use my safety pin to pass this through my elastic casing and show you what it looks like at the end of the day. So this is what it looks like. This is what we have at the end of the day after doing this. Okay, you can see we have our ruffles at the down already. So I'll just go ahead and make stitch at the end, that both ends of my elastic casing, and do the same for the other sleeve. So I've done that. We have our sleeves ready. So the next thing to do is to attach this to our top so we can stitch it down. I'll just get the midpoint of my sleeve. Okay, I'll get the midpoint of my sleeve, mark this out, make a notch at that end in order for me to not make a mistake later, and then attach it to the shoulder area where I made my joining at the clothes. Okay, so I'll pin this down, and then repeat the same thing for the other sleeve. Get the midpoint and then do the same thing I did for it. So if you are a returning subscriber, thank you for coming back to watch, and if you're new to the channel, please do well to subscribe and turn on your notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video, and don't forget to like and drop your comments. Okay, so I've gone ahead to stitch this down. You can see this is the back of my shoulder, the sleeve area. So what I'm going to do now is to stitch down my shoulder. Remember, I add my sleeve, sorry, I added 1 inch for the sleeve and then 2 inches of allowance. So I will stitch that down, and then after doing that I will just hem the edge of my sleeve. So this is what it looks like after doing that. I even went ahead to iron this down. So the last thing we're doing is to fix our zipper to this, and then that is all for the top. So this is the final look of the top. You can see the neck is kind of high because of me not using too much, because I didn't want my bust to be showing. Okay, so let me know in the comments of what you think about this video and how you found this tutorial, if you found it easy to understand. Okay, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.